Have you ever watched someone's grief twist so tightly around their heart that it turns into something unrecognizable, something dangerous, something unstoppable? Because in the world of Bugonia, the scariest thing isn't a monster in the dark or a shadow moving in the corner of your eye. It's the moment a person becomes so convinced they're right that reality itself stops mattering, and the truth becomes whatever they can survive believing. This is the story of Teddy Gatz, a quiet beekeeper with rough hands, a broken past, and a mind filled with questions that no one ever answered. And what begins as a desperate search for justice spirals into a nightmare that ends with the entire world going silent. In a world not too unlike our own, deep within the sprawling industrial corridors of existence, there lived a man named Teddy Gatz, a beekeeper with gentle hands and a haunted past, whose life had once been filled with the humble joys of tending to buzzing hives and watching golden honey drip like molten sunshine, but which had since been ruptured by tragedy and suspicion so profound that it would bend his mind into the shape of obsession. Long ago, Teddy had worked on the assembly lines and loading docks of Oxalith, a pharmaceutical megacorporation so vast and powerful that its name was whispered in boardrooms and government halls alike, its products coursing through the bodies of millions, its reach extending into every crevice of global medicine. And yet in the quiet fields where Teddy kept his bees, he saw only devastation, watched helplessly as colony collapse disorder ravaged his apiary, as hives once abuzz with life turned eerily silent, bees gone without a trace, leaving behind empty combs and the hollow echo of loss. And he was convinced, utterly convinced, that Oxalith's chemical concoctions were to blame, that their unseen toxins seeped into pollen and nectar, into soil and water, and infiltrated the bodies of the insects he loved, killing them in numbers too vast and too inexplicable to be natural. He remembered the first time he noticed it, the way a healthy hive should sound like a living engine, a soft storm of wings and purpose, but how one morning he walked out with his smoker and veil and found nothing but a sick hush, a few confused workers crawling like they'd forgotten where home was, and the queen, his queen, alone, surrounded by emptiness, and Teddy's stomach dropped as if the ground itself had opened beneath him. At first he told himself it was weather, mites, bad luck, anything. But what his mind kept circling like a vulture, but then it happened again and again and again, until the pattern became too sharp to ignore, until the silence in his fields started to feel like a message. But that was not the entire wound Teddy carried, for beneath this anger lay a deeper, more personal scar. Years earlier his beloved mother, Sandy, a woman of warmth and laughter, had volunteered for what was touted as a cutting-edge clinical trial conducted by Oxalith, a promise of hope wrapped in white coats and scientific jargon, a chance for wellness that instead delivered ruin, leaving her in a persistent vegetative state, unresponsive to the world, trapped in a shattered shell of a body that breathed but did not truly live. And Teddy remembered that day with a clarity that burned. Sandy signing papers with a smile that said she trusted the future, the doctor speaking in careful tones about breakthroughs and progress, the corporate representative shaking Teddy's hand like this was a partnership instead of a gamble. And then weeks later the phone call, the rushed voices, the ambulance, the fluorescent lights, the cold smell of antiseptic, and Sandy lying in a hospital bed with her eyes open but vacant, like her soul had stepped out and never came back. Teddy had stood there holding her limp fingers, begging her to squeeze back, begging her to blink, to do anything, but her body remained still, and every machine in the room seemed to mock him with its steady beeping, as if it was counting the seconds of his life that were being stolen away. Oxalith, of course, had called it an unforeseen adverse outcome, a rare complication, a tragic but statistically insignificant event, and they offered settlements and silence like bandages for a severed limb, but Teddy couldn't accept it, couldn't swallow the neat corporate language that tried to turn his mother into a footnote. He watched lawyers and executives glide past accountability like oil over water, watched them smile for cameras while his mother lay frozen in a nursing facility. Her body present, her mind gone, and something inside Teddy snapped in a way that never fully healed. In his grief-bent mind, these tragedies wove together into a tapestry of conspiracy so dark that he no longer saw Oxalith as merely negligent or greedy, but as something far more sinister. He began reading everything he could, not just news articles but message boards, leaked memos, fringe podcasts, old medical journals, anything that could stitch meaning into his pain, and every coincidence became a clue. Every unanswered question became proof of a cover-up, every corporate denial became confirmation that the truth was being buried. And then he saw her, Michelle Fuller, on a screen in a break room once, years ago, when he still worked at Oxalith, the CEO stepping onto a stage with a polished smile and a voice like velvet steel, talking about innovation and human health and a better tomorrow. And Teddy remembered how the employees around him clapped like she was a savior, how the company treated her like royalty, but Teddy felt something else, something cold and wrong, like her eyes didn't match the warmth in her words. He couldn't explain it, not at first, but the feeling stuck to him, and over time, as his paranoia grew roots, that feeling turned into a belief. He became convinced that Michelle Fuller, portrayed in headlines and PR campaigns with her confident smile and immaculate poise, wasn't human at all, but an alien matriarch from a distant Andromedan race that had infiltrated positions of power across Earth with the hidden agenda of manipulating and ultimately extinguishing humanity. An idea that to most would sound like the fever dream of a broken man, but to Teddy felt as clear and immutable as daylight. He pictured Andromedans as ancient, patient predators wearing human skin like a costume, sitting in boardrooms, signing documents, deciding which populations would thrive and which would die, and he imagined the bees, the collapse, the environmental decay, the drug trials, all of it as part of a long plan to weaken humanity from the inside until it could be erased without resistance. And in Teddy's mind, his mother Sandy wasn't just collateral damage, she was a casualty of war. Driven by this belief, Teddy recruited his cousin Don, a young man with a tender heart and a mind vulnerable to suggestion, someone who had always looked up to Teddy and longed for meaning and belonging, someone who struggled to fit into the world's sharp edges and found comfort in Teddy's certainty, because certainty is addictive when your own thoughts feel like static. Don didn't have Teddy's hardened rage, but he had loneliness, and Teddy's theories gave that loneliness a shape, gave it a purpose, and the more Teddy talked, the more Don started to see the world the same way, like a stage with hidden trapdoors and invisible puppeteers. Together they planned what would be forever etched in the grim annals of their small rural community, the kidnapping of Michelle Fuller herself, not as a random act of violence in their minds, but as an act of rescue, a desperate mission to expose the truth and save humanity. Teddy didn't call it kidnapping, he called it extraction, like Michelle was a parasite that had to be removed, like the world was sick and he was the only one willing to cut it open. Under the veil of night, with trembling hands and ragged nerves, they broke into Michelle's secluded home, overpowered her bewildered security, and abducted the woman who everyone else saw as a charismatic leader and titan of industry, dragging her into the back of their battered truck and taking her to a makeshift hideout in the basement of an abandoned farmhouse, a place filled with dusty relics of another life, its walls lined with peanut crates and broken light bulbs, its air heavy with damp earth and old rot, a place that felt like it had been forgotten by time. Michelle woke up bound and gagged, her eyes darting wildly in the dim light, and for the first time in her life she looked less like a zoo and more like a person, vulnerable and terrified. And Teddy watched her with a mixture of triumph and trembling fear, because even he didn't fully understand what he'd unleashed. In their warped logic, they believed Michelle could only demonstrate her true alien nature if stripped of the trappings of humanity, so they shaved her head to remove any semblance of normalcy, convinced that only without hair could she be prevented from signaling to her supposed mothership, as if follicles were antennas and strands were wires to the stars. The clippers buzzed like angry insects as her hair fell in uneven clumps onto the concrete floor, and Michelle struggled against her restraints, tears spilling down her cheeks, but Teddy saw the tears as performance, a mimicry of human emotion meant to manipulate him, and Don stood there shaking, barely able to hold the clippers steady, whispering apologies under his breath like prayers. And then came the antihistamine cream, thick, white, cold, and Teddy smeared it across her skin with ritualistic intensity, coating her arms, her neck, her shoulders, muttering about blocking signals, about cutting off frequencies, about preventing the Andromedans from locking onto her, and the absurdity of it would have been almost laughable if it wasn't so horrifying. because to Teddy it wasn't absurd at all. It was science, it was warfare, it was survival. 4 days Michelle endured psychological torment and physical humiliation at the hands of her captors, their questions veering between nonsensical and violent, their accusations sharp and unpredictable, while Teddy paced the basement with fevered urgency, convinced that a looming lunar eclipse, a celestial event that made his conspiracy feel imminent, would be the moment when the Andromedan mothership entered Earth's atmosphere undetected, and only by extracting a confession from Michelle before the eclipse could he avert an alien takeover. He gave her 4 days like it was a courtroom deadline, like the universe itself had issued a countdown, and every hour that passed made him more frantic, more certain, more dangerous. He would sit across from her on an overturned crate, staring at her face like he was searching for seams in her skin, asking questions in a calm voice that could flip into screaming without warning. What are you? How long have you been here? How many of you are there? What did you do to the bees? And Michelle, smart and calculating, answered carefully, sometimes denying, sometimes pleading, sometimes staying silent, always watching Teddy's eyes, always measuring the cracks in his belief. Dawn, meanwhile, drifted like a ghost between rooms, unable to sleep, unable to eat, flinching at every sound, because the basement wasn't just a prison for Michelle, it was a prison for them too, a place where the air felt heavier each day, where reality warped under the weight of Teddy's obsession. Interspersed with these present horrors were flashbacks into Teddy's life, scenes of him as a boy, his mother smiling as she tended the family garden, the bright buzz of bees filling the air, Sandy teaching him how to move slowly near the hives, how to respect the bees instead of fearing them, how to listen to the hum and know whether the colony was calm or stressed. He remembered the first sting he ever got, how Sandy laughed softly and kissed his forehead and told him pain was part of learning, and he remembered thinking back then that as long as his mother was there, nothing could truly break him. We see Teddy older, working at Oxalith, hauling crates, breathing chemical air, watching warning labels flash by, hearing coworkers joke about mutant meds and profit juice, and we see him in a courtroom later, desperate, pleading for accountability, his voice shaking as he tries to explain what happened to Sandy, only to be met with sterile corporate language, lawyers who speak in smooth circles, judges who look bored, and an outcome that feels like a stamp of dismissal on his grief. He walks out into the sunlight afterward and feels like the world has moved on without him, leaving him behind with nothing but unanswered questions and the sound of bees fading from his life. Back in the basement, Teddy's paranoia sharpened into rituals. He would check the windows for strange lights, hold a cheap radio up to the ceiling searching for signals, draw symbols in notebooks, map out lunar cycles, and tape-printed screenshots of Michelle's speeches onto the wall like evidence in a detective's lair. Michelle watched all of this, and even as fear gnawed at her, she recognized something else too. Teddy wasn't just angry, he was wounded, and wounded people are unpredictable because pain doesn't follow logic. Meanwhile, Don, once eager to please, began to unravel, his conscience crumbling under the weight of what they were doing, haunted by Michelle's cries and the creeping realization that this wasn't justice but atrocity. He'd stare at his hands and feel like they weren't his anymore, like he was watching himself from outside his body, trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. He tried to reason with Teddy, to remind him of the line between right and wrong, but Teddy, spiraling ever deeper into his worldview, interpreted Don's compassion as weakness, a flaw that the Andromedans themselves must have engineered into human DNA as part of their experiment, a cruel irony that only further warped his resolve. Teddy told him that empathy was a trap, that guilt was a weapon, that Don was lucky to be awake, now, lucky to be part of the resistance, and Don nodded because he didn't know how to argue with someone who spoke like prophecy. But every night Don heard Michelle sobbing softly in the dark, and every morning he saw her shaved head, her pale skin smeared with drying cream, her wrists raw from restraints, and something inside him screamed that this wasn't saving the world, this was destroying it. And then came the moment that shattered everything. In a fit of despair and guilt, Don took his own life in front of Michelle, the shotgun blast ripping through the already fractured calm of the basement, blood and silence colliding in a way that neither Teddy nor Michelle could ignore. It happened fast, like a sudden storm, Don's hands shaking, his eyes wide and wet, his voice cracking as he whispered that he couldn't do it anymore, that he couldn't live with what they'd done, and Teddy lunged forward too late, shouting his name, and then the sound exploded, loud enough to make the walls vibrate, and Don collapsed in a violent finality that sprayed the room with horror. Michelle screamed, not just in fear but in shock, because even she hadn't expected that, and Teddy froze, staring at Don's body like his mind couldn't process it, like the universe had glitched. Don's death didn't break Teddy's delusions, but it cracked them, just enough to let in a sliver of doubt, a space where Michelle, ever quick and astute, saw an opportunity to reach him through the only language left, grief, the raw, bleeding wound at the heart of his crusade. In the aftermath, Teddy moved like a man underwater, dragging Don's body away, wiping blood from his face with trembling hands, whispering prayers that didn't sound like prayers at all, and for the first time his eyes looked less like a crusader's and more like a child's, lost and terrified in the wreckage of his own choices. Michelle watched him carefully, because she understood something vital. Teddy wasn't driven by evil, he was driven by loss, and loss makes people do things they never thought they were capable of. With tears streaking down her shaved face, Michelle wove a story that blended truth and fiction so seamlessly that Teddy, desperate for any sliver of hope, clung to it with trembling hands. She told him the Andromedans did exist, that they had come to Earth eons ago and reshaped humanity after a cataclysmic extinction, guiding evolutionary paths and hidden histories. Their mission originally noble but ultimately soured by the cruelty and self-destruction of mankind, and that there was a cure for Sandy's condition, not in some alien device, but in a bottle in her car disguised as antifreeze, which contained a secret compound she'd developed to heal neural degeneration. She spoke softly, like she was letting him in on a sacred secret, like she was giving him the one thing he wanted most, a chance to undo the past. Teddy's eyes widened, his breathing quickened, and he asked her again and again if she was telling the truth, and Michelle nodded, telling him that she didn't want humans to suffer, that she understood his pain, that Sandy's condition wasn't supposed to happen, that mistakes were made, and that she could help him fix it if he acted quickly. Teddy, his heart a maelstrom of hope and despair, raced to the long-term care facility where his mother lay, ignored the protests of staff, and injected her with the mysterious liquid, his hands shaking so violently he nearly dropped the syringe. He whispered, "Mom, please," over and over, like a chant, like a lifeline, and for a brief second he thought he saw something change in her face, some flicker, some sign that she was coming back, but then her body stiffened, her breathing faltered, alarms screamed, nurses rushed in, and Teddy realized in the moment after her body went limp that he had killed her, his hope turning to ash as her life slipped away, another irreversible loss carved into his already shattered soul. He stumbled backward, mouth open in silent horror, as if he'd been punched through the chest, and when staff tried to restrain him he fought like an animal, screaming that they didn't understand, that he was saving her, that he was fixing it, but the truth was brutal and simple. He had ended her life with his own hands, guided by a lie or by something worse than a lie. When Teddy returned to the basement, broken and spent, his face hollow and his eyes sunken, Michelle could see the devastation she'd caused in him, but she didn't stop, because now she had leverage, and leverage meant survival. Michelle confronted him with the full truth she had been hiding. In the darkened corner of that musty space, behind peeling plaster and discarded crates, was evidence of others, victims of Teddy's earlier impulses before his fixation on Michelle, people he had taken, people he had tortured in misguided attempts to uncover hidden truths, echoes of violence that he had buried deep within his psyche. There were chains, old restraints, scratched names on the wall, photographs, notes, items that didn't belong to Don or Teddy, and Teddy stared at them like he was seeing them for the first time, like he had dissociated so completely that even his own past crimes felt like someone else's life. His defenses, once impervious, now crumbled, and Michelle, seizing the psychological leverage, revealed her most extraordinary confession yet, that the Andromedans were real, that she herself was their emissary, sent not to conquer but to preserve, to steer humanity away from its self-destructive trajectory, but having grown disillusioned by human cruelty and ecological collapse, she saw no choice but to enact a final judgment. She spoke about Earth like it was a failed project, like a garden overrun with weeds, and she spoke about humans like they were children who refused to stop playing with fire. Teddy, standing there with blood on his shoes and grief in his throat, didn't know what to believe anymore, because every part of him was collapsing at once. His mission, his righteousness, his identity. Michelle told him that humanity had been engineered long ago, after a previous extinction, and that the Andromedans had watched from the shadows ever since, hoping humans would evolve into something better, but instead they had become consumers, destroyers, poisoners of their own planet, and that the bees were only the beginning, the canary in the coal mine, the first sign that Earth itself was dying under human hands. And then she offered him something that sounded like mercy. She spoke of an ancient teleporter, a closet in her corporate office, capable of transporting Teddy to the Andromedan mothership where he could see the truth for himself, a truth that might redeem his pain and prove her claims beyond doubt. She said if he wanted answers, real answers, not conspiracy scraps and internet noise, she could show him the control room where the Andromedans monitored Earth, the records of Sandy's trial, the chemical logs, the environmental data, everything. Teddy's mind reeled, because this was what he'd wanted, wasn't it? Proof. Truth. A reason. But now truth felt like a knife. Teddy, teetering between despair and revelation, his mind a tempest of grief and belief, agreed to enter the closet, but not without sealing his conviction in a suicide vest, a grim testament to his willingness to die for what he believed was the salvation of Earth. He didn't trust Michelle, not fully, but he didn't trust himself either, and the vest was his final insurance. His final control over a life that had spun out of his hands. He stepped into the small chamber, the vest strapped tightly to his chest, and with a single word of farewell or defiance that was lost to the ragged air, the device detonated, ending his life instantly in a thunderous burst, leaving only the smoke of his resolve lingering in the air. The explosion was sudden, brutal, and final, and for a moment there was nothing but ringing silence, dust drifting down like gray snow, and Michelle standing alone, her expression unreadable. At first, it seemed that Michelle may be the only survivor of this madness, that in the stillness of the basement she would call for help, alert authorities, and this nightmare might finally be contained, that the world would label Teddy a madman, Don a tragic accomplice, and Michelle a traumatized victim, and that would be the end of it, a horrific story on the news that people would forget after a few weeks. But the story did not end there. In the sterile corridor of an ambulance, with paramedics working frantically, Michelle saw her chance, slipped from their grasp, and returned to her sleek corporate tower, her mind already shifting gears, her facade once again immaculate and controlled. The shaved head was gone now beneath a cap, her body cleaned, her posture restored, and she moved through the world like someone who belonged above consequences. She entered her office and approached the unassuming closet, the same portal she had mentioned in the basement with such weighty promise, and as her hand brushed the cool metal handle, a shimmering cascade of light unfurled, humming with energy, and she stepped in. The portal activated in a burst of luminescence that rippled like a stone tossed into a pond, and she vanished from Earth as though she had never been there at all. On the vast Andromedan mothership, in a colossal chamber of consoles and screens that pulsed with cryptic data, Michelle stood among others of her kind, their forms elegant and otherworldly, their eyes reflecting eons of cosmic knowledge, and the air around them vibrated with power that felt ancient, cold, and absolute. Here, Michelle was no longer just a CEO or an emissary, she was revealed as something far greater, the Andromedan Empress, the one who held authority over the mission, the one whose decisions would determine the fate of an entire planet. The control room stretched like a cathedral of technology, walls lined with floating holographic projections of Earth, showing cities like veins of light, oceans like breathing lungs, forests like fragile patches of green struggling against gray sprawl, and as Michelle gazed down at the world they had observed for so long, her expression was not angry, not vengeful, but disappointed, like a scientist watching a petri dish spoil. She initiated the final phase of their judgment, not with a dramatic speech, not with explosions in the sky, but with a simple gesture that resonated through the interconnected systems of their craft, a command delivered like a whisper that carried the weight of extinction, and in that instant, she unleashed a cleansing signal upon the planet below, a wave that struck every human mind and body, and across Earth, people collapsed lifeless, the noise of civilization extinguished in a heartbeat. Drivers slumped over steering wheels, conversations died mid-sentence, stadiums fell silent, hospitals became mausoleums, skyscrapers stood tall over empty streets, and the world, for the first time in human history, was quiet. No sirens, no music, no laughter, no crying, no voices at all, just wind moving through abandoned places. And yet, in the eerie stillness that followed, amid the silence of empty cities and motionless crowds, tiny vibrations stirred in fields and forests where human presence had once overshadowed every living thing. For the bees, those small heralds of life that Teddy had loved, began to return, their wings beating a careful rhythm against the dawn, weaving sweetness through the air once more, as if nature itself was reclaiming the world, offering a new chapter for life beyond humanity's ruin. Testament to the paradox of destruction and renewal that lay at the heart of the mythic belief of Bugonia, where from sacrifice and death, life might rise again. And in that final haunting image, as the sun rose over a planet emptied of people, the bees flew through golden light like sparks of rebirth, and the audience is left with a question that lingers like smoke in the lungs. Was Teddy right to fear the Andromedans, or was he simply the first victim of a truth too terrible for the human mind to hold? And so the world ended not with a war, nor with a cosmic invasion in the way we imagine, but with a quiet obliteration, a judgment passed down by forces beyond human understanding, echoing through empty streets and silent skies, and Bugonia leaves us staring into that silence, wondering what it says about us, about the planet we've shaped, and about the thin, fragile line between seeking justice and becoming the monster you think you're fighting. Thanks for watching, and if this story sent chills down your spine, make sure you're ready, because the next one might hit even closer to home. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more gripping movie explanations like this.